Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. IB to everyone. My name is Nurul Ira Shakila binti Armin with metric number 2211742. I will start this presentation with the concept of relativism. The idea that all points of view are equally legitimate is occasionally used to describe relativism, often by its detractors. This translates to arguing that all moralities are good in terms of ethics, and it suggests that all belief systems are true in terms of epistemology. Let me tell you a brief about the history of relativism. The Scottish philosopher Sir William Hamilton's work from 1859 contained the earliest recorded use of the term relativism. More interesting than the origin of the word relativism is the fact that the idea goes back long before the big brains of the 18th to 19th centuries. In fact, scholars generally agree that the first relativist was the ancient Greek philosopher Protagoras, approximately 490 to 421 before Christ. Protagoras claimed that the man is the measure of all things was heavily criticized by Plato. Plato argued that since everything is relative from a human viewpoint, then Protagoras' own claim that the truth is relative must also be true. Let's move to the factors which lead to the development of relativism. The first aspect is philosophy. The earlier mentioned German philosopher Immanuel Kant asserted that the true nature of reality is outside the domain of human perception. The only phenomena we can manage are those we can see, smell, touch, and so on. From here, it was a relatively short step to the notion that views about spirituality, ethics, and culture were clearly held by people. As a result, there was simply relative truth, valid only in the context of the culture in which they were accepted. The second factor is anthropology. The comparative study of human societies, known as cultural anthropology, was a significant factor in the relativism trend. However, a new generation of anthropologists, including the German-born Franz Boas, the American Ruth Benedict, and Margaret Mead, started to question this presumption. According to these anthropologists, no one from one culture has the right to criticize another. The third factor is psychology. Many people think that the growth of relativism was influenced by modern psychology. Of course, Sigmund Freud, the German psychoanalyst, is the significant person in this. From 1856 to 1939, Freud claimed, among other things, that the entire religious mood was a retreat to our earliest postnatal sensations of unity with our mothers, or the product of our infantile desire for a protecting father figure. One might now contend that religion is a psychological phenomenon that occurs internally. All other truths look to have to submit to relativism as a result of this reduction of belief to a psychological process.
My name is Amiratul Huda binti Jair Maslan, and I would like to share about the characteristic of relativism. Firstly, ethical relativism. There are no universal moral standard. They say that the moral rightness and wrongness of actions varies from society to society, and that there are no absolute universal moral standard binding on all men at all times. Next, each person has a set of beliefs and experiences, a particular perspective that colors all their perception. Then, individuals act depend on their society. They just decide which actions are morally wrong and which are not. Depends on their society. Later, there are no absolute or objective moral norms that apply to all people to all time. If you want to do, you can do it. If you don't want, you can leave it. Okay, now we move to culture relativism. Firstly, different societies have different morals. For example, in Europe, women can wear short skirt or face uncovered, but in Middle Eastern Islamic countries, it's considered two immoral acts. Next, the moral code of our own society has no special status because all society have their own moral code and you can judge the society. Then, the moral code of a society determines what right and wrong within that society. They just follow what they think is good and avoid the bad habits. And lastly, culture is not a system that all people must follow. You can choose you want to do or not based on your belief and perspective.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. My name is Sharifa Faiza binti Said Abdul Nasir, and the first impact is that the cultural relativism is believed to be morally infallible. Infallible means to be free of mistakes, so there is no right or wrong. People who can follow their own moral code would be allowed to pursue any life they preferred under the theory of cultural relativism. If you're upset with your neighbor, then you can kill that person without consequence if your moral code allows for murder. And this relates to point number two, which is it creates chaos. Another instance that could be portrayed is that instead of purchasing something, you could steal it if you see stealing as the right thing to do. So there is no real way to protect people in such society. So each person becomes responsible to protect themselves. And the last point is that it creates a system that is fueled by personal bias. Every society has a certain natural bias to it because of how humanity operates. People tend to prefer to be with others who have similar thoughts and feelings, so they segregate themselves into neighborhoods, communities, and social groups that share specific perspective. When people are given the power to define their own moral code, then they will do so based on their own personal bias. And there is no longer a group perspective, and people follow their own code at the expense of others. This is an example of relativism practice in India. So before the British rule, there was a custom called sati. Sati is a tradition where when a man died, his wife was burned alive with her husband's body. So if the widow refused to do so, she brought great shame on her family and had to spend the rest of her life with a shaved head, locked inside her family's house, and never allowed to remarry or go out in public again. So this practice of widow burning simply feels wrong to some people like us. Well, we can't really condemn what this group of people are doing as simply being wrong, because it seems right to the majority of people in that other society.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ani Sofia binti Muhammad Safian. As we know, the Islamic worldview is the very opposite of relativism, but a positive attribute that we can take from relativism is respecting each other's culture. The existence of different culture and society is acknowledged and embraced in Islam in Surah Al-Hujurat verse 13. At present, we are living in the age of globalization in community composed of people from diverse ethnic, religion, and cultural background. Every day, we interact with the followers of different religion as neighbor, colleagues, classmates, friends, and so on. In fact, to disrespect other religion is explicitly condemned in the Quran in Surah Al-An'am verse 108. وَلَا تَسَبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, and do not insult those they invoke other than Allah. If a person claims to be a Muslim, he is not allowed to insult or disrespect another religion. This is forbidden according to the Quran, meaning that all people, no matter what religion, race, or class they come from, are supposed to be treated equally and cannot be discriminated against or disrespected for their belief. But we as a Muslim should know our boundaries and not following any cultural act because there are particular society culture is against Islamic principle. Enough of us to just respect it and not put out harsh word for those that are practicing other culture or religion. However, relativism will never be the way of a Muslim. In fact, the Islamic position is the very opposite of relativism. Relativists shun or reject authority, knowledge, rationality, and certainty. They construct that a person claim that they know the truth because to them that is simply their view, while everybody else has his or her own view. Relativism also does not allow for the existence of an absolute set of ethics, which means there can be no absolute God. Muslims believe in the absolute oneness of God. He is the creator of everything and is completely separate from his creation, and all worship is to be directed towards him only, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Gerd Klotz has listed 7 things that an ethical relativist could not do. Some of them are cannot accuse others of wrongdoings, cannot place blame or accept praise, and relativists cannot claim anything is unfair or unjust. This shows that everyone can do anything that they want on the reason that is right for them, and no one can say it is wrong because everyone has their own view. Contrary to Islam, everything that we do must be based on Al-Quran and Sunnah. If we say that it was wrong to do something in the Quran, then no one can say that it is permissible. It provides spiritual and physical guidelines for sustainability in life. Islam outlined the need to preserve religion, life, mind, dignity, and wealth. Allah said in the Quran, Surah An-Nahl, verse 89, and we have revealed the book to you explaining clear everything. Muslims throughout the history will ensure the certainty of things by referring to the original sources, the Quran and As-Sunnah, where the sources of Islam remain intact, and with the reportable methods of approaching the authentic sources, Muslims are able to differentiate between the truth and the false. Opposed to relativism that uses logic, a reason to understand the reality of things is insufficient.
So Alhamdulillah, we have reached to the summary. So this summary is in form of infographic so that we can have a better understanding. So first of all, what is relativism? Relativism is a belief that there is no absolute truth and the only truth is based on a particular or a culture happens to believe. Alright, so their concept is basically based on the moralities are good in terms of ethics. Alright, so next, relativism have two characteristics and principles. So first is ethical relativism and second is cultural relativism. So ethical relativism is side of belief that someone based on their experiences or other perspective. And next, it is based on individual acts, depends on their society. And then the other one is cultural relativism. It is based on different societies have different moral. So the moral code of the society determine what is right and what is wrong. So the impact of relativism to people, it basically have three. So first is it will create chaos, and second it will have a personal bias, and third it will have a morally infallible. So one of the example is based on the name is called STUTTEE, SUTTEE, SUTTEE. So it existed in India, and based on that time it is prior to British control. So whenever man passed away, his wife was burned alive alongside his body. So it is criminal for our others believers, but for them it is right. Alright, so last but not least is about shortcomings of relativism in relation with Islamic worldview. So the thing that I want to highlight is here is about Muslim belief. Muslim belief is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, only Allah. Alright, no others than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alright, next, everything is based on Al-Quran and As-Sunnah, is hadith. Okay, Allah has compiled everything in a beautiful way, which is Al-Quran. So we have to make as our Al-Quran as our GPS so that we can have a good foundation, we can have a good knowledge about our life and our purpose as a Muslim. Alright, so Alhamdulillah, that's all from us. Thank you.
The A to Z of isms. Relativism. Moral relativism is the view that what's right in one culture may be wrong in another, and that there's no way of judging between the two. It's all relative. There's no absolute truth of the matter. Different strokes for different folks, and that's okay. Imagine a Martian landing on Earth. She would see that people behave differently in different places. They've got different moral rules, different social customs. What's right in one location is wrong in another. She might well conclude that there's no such thing as the right way to live, or the right thing to do, for everyone at all times. It's all a matter of cultural norms. So, in parts of Spain, bullfighting is seen as a spectacle, whereas in many other countries, it's considered outrageous cruelty. Try setting up a bull ring in present-day London, for instance. If the visiting Martian could get an overview of the history of the world, she'd see that in ancient Rome it was fine to have gladiatorial combat to the death and to own slaves, but that both practices would be widely frowned upon in present-day Rome, or Amsterdam, or elsewhere. Attending fights to the death and keeping slaves was acceptable for the Romans, but would be wrong in today's Europe. This sort of relativism has been popular with some anthropologists who've attempted to appreciate other cultures from within, understanding sets of interwoven practices as responses to particular circumstances and traditions. They recognise that morality is different in different cultures, and they often argue that it's ethnocentric to impose your own set of values elsewhere, as if you know best. Such non-judgmental relativism might seem attractive, but think about Nazi Germany. There, it became socially acceptable and even required to treat Jews, homosexuals and gypsies as less than human. This became right there, both legally and morally. A relativist would simply have to bite the bullet and say that that was indeed right for Nazi Germany. That's what morality meant there, and that a morality which treats everybody with equal respect is no better or worse than the Nazi way of doing things, just different. Unless you want to embrace that sort of repugnant conclusion, it's probably best to steer clear of moral relativism. Some people go further and say that everything is relative, even truth, that what is true at one time in one place isn't true for everyone everywhere, or that there's no such thing as objective truth, just the truth according to me. We see hints of this in politics today. There is a big problem with this sort of relativism, though. The theory of relativism itself would have to, on its own account, be relative. So the theory that truth is relative couldn't be absolutely true.
Assalamualaikum and a very good evening. I wish to all my loyal audience, I, Nurul Irashakila, as your host in our Sisters podcast tonight. Today's topic is quite interesting. Relativism. Is it wrong to judge other cultures? What do you say? We have 4 invited guests who are here to join us to discuss and find answers to every question that arises about our topic tonight. Our first speaker is Sister Sharifah Faiza. Sister Ani Sofia is going to be our second speaker. And our third speaker, Sister Nur Farah Hanis. Last but not least, our fourth speaker is Sister Amiratul Huda. What does relativism mean exactly in your mind? Relativism simply means the viewpoint of the man himself is the measure of truth. So, let's begin our Sisters podcast tonight with Sister Sharifah Faiza. What is the definition of relativism in your point of view?
First of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be on this podcast. So, roughly put, I would say that relativism is a belief that there is no absolute truth, because the truth only exists if a particular person or culture happens to believe in it. So, if you believe in relativism, then you would have a belief that different people can have different views on what is right and wrong. So, the truth is not always the same, but it varies according to circumstances. which we could also say that relativists actually believe that all points of view are equally valid. Thank you.
Such a clear explanation from our first guest. Now we all know what the meaning behind the term relativism is. Okay, everything in this world has its pros and cons. In your opinion, Sister Annie Sophia, what is the danger of relativism? Why it seems to bring more harm to people?
So why relativism is a real danger? If there really isn't any truth, I can believe anything I want to be true and it now becomes my truth. So if truth becomes relative, we have no way of measuring what is real and what is not. So we can no longer turn to laws to govern our society. We cannot even argue with each other to find common ground because relativism consider both parties totally right and totally wrong based on different perspective. 200 years ago in America, slavery was the norm and morally acceptable, but now it is not. Therefore, it was shown that relativism can erode virtue, peace, order and justice, and cast the world and everyone in it into a chaos.
Oh wow, we got a different opinion from our sister Annie Sophia. Next, how about we hear the opinion from our third speaker, Sister Nur Farahani. Do you think it is wrong to judge other cultures in Islamic perspective?
Alright, Alhamdulillah. Thank you, moderator, for inviting me. So first of all, let us have a look at Western ideology. They tend not to judge a culture to their own standard of what is right or wrong, strange or normal. Instead, try to understand cultural practices of other groups in its own cultural context. So here, based on Islamic perspective, Allah recorded in Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 48, where in that ayah, Islam teaches the same principle that Muslims have to respect every ideology, culture, community, and religion. So the purpose of diversity is for the purpose of knowing one another. God did not make us one community because He wanted to test us, and all will be answerable to Him on the day of judgment. So lastly, respect them but don't support what they are doing or believe. It is because Islam is an uncompromising religion that requires total submission to the will of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Allahu A'lam, and thank you.
We all seem to agree that we need to respect each other even though we have different ideologies and cultures. So let's hear from Sister Amiratul Huda on why we should stop judging other cultures. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for your question. Okay, for me, we should stop judging other culture or we need to stop being judgmental person. Like, for example, your favorite color is blue, but my favorite color is purple. So you cannot judge me why I love purple and not other colors. Just respect their culture. For example, in Malay culture, we eat by using our hands and other cultures eat by using a fork and spoon. This culture is not wrong and we also can eat the same way. In the other way, we can share our culture to other people and also we can learn other cultures during our vacation to other countries. That's all for me.
We have heard all the opinions and answers from our panel members who are present in our podcast today. I believe that there are traces of this in current politics. Therefore, the idea that truth is relative cannot be proven to be accurate. Dear audience, it is undeniable that it is wrong to judge other cultures. It is good to have enough tolerance in ourselves. Maybe you don't approve of what other people have done, but it's not up to you to judge what he did. Live and let live. That's all for our sisters podcast for tonight. I would like to thank you to all the guests as well as all the audience who stayed to the end of our podcast. Thank you once again and have a nice day.